So we're going to move on to our next panel. We've got bridging Web2, Web3, IPFS, and Opera. So Opera is obviously what we would know as like a analog browser. They're probably the most innovative when it comes to looking at how to integrate this new technology. So we've got an all-star panel going to be talking about how we're putting this bridge into. We've got Susie who's going to moderate, Igor, Dietrich, and Batt. So you guys ready to go?
Woo!
Yep.
Ready. Woo!
Okay, take it away.
Thanks, John. Thanks, John. Thanks, Jonathan, backstage here. I'm Susie Batt, and I'm Global Crypto Community Lead at Opera. I'd love to dive right in with introductions from the panel. Who you are, your role, organization, and what you're working on. We'll start with Igor.
Yeah, so I'm Igor. I'm from Opera, and I'm lead crypto researcher, I guess my position is called. So basically, I'm responsible for a little bit of project management and implementation of different crypto and blockchain related projects at Opera. So
Great, Brad.
Yes, I'm Brad Cam, co-founder at Unstoppable Domains.
And Dietrich.
Hey, everybody. My name is Dietrich Ayala. I'm the IPFS ecosystem lead at Protocol Labs.
Great. Well, Dietrich, let's start with you. What is the Interplanetary File System, IPFS, and what is the problem it's solving?
So IPFS is, if you're familiar with HTTP, a protocol for content distribution. IPFS solves a couple of problems. One thing that I like to remind people that is interesting is that while people don't necessarily understand how the web works, they know what a 404 is. They know when something's gone. They know when they can't find something. Everybody knows when a website's down, and we also kind of know what it's like to not be able to find the data we're looking for anymore, or to have lost files, to have some stuff that maybe you've deleted that you didn't necessarily want to delete. We're familiar with when we get an SSL error, and we also know what it's like to have our internet go out, and that web page that you were just at, you can't get back to anymore. IPFS solves a number of these different problems. These are the type of paper cuts that we experience as humans using the internet, like a lot of us do all day, every day now. I guess a collective many billions of times now, probably a day. And IPFS provides a foundation and a framework for a more resilient internet that makes offline usage easy, works out of the box, is encrypted by default when in transport, and provide some of the primitives for more direct human communication online, ways that you and I can interact more directly with each other instead of through a third-party website.
Great. It's so animated, Dietrich. I love it. It's like great storytelling. IPFS support, Igor, IPFS support in Opera is about a year old. IPFS features were enabled by default in Opera browser. Opera mobile web browser was the first to ship IPFS features in a production release. What are we celebrating today? What's the news?
yeah, so basically there are two announcements. As you told, yes, the first browser that got full enabled by default, which is very important because we shouldn't underestimate the power of default. So if you need to install an extension to browse whatever you need to browse, you just lost like 80% of your users immediately. So the first browser that had this support was Opera for Android. I think it was something about in March of 2020 it was released. And but that was basically, it's a big platform, it's a lot of users, but it's not everything. So today we're basically announcing that we are covering the rest of the popular platforms. So there is an support in Opera, like Opera Touch for iOS, version 2.5.5. It's already in the App Store. It's also enabled by default there, so you can just browse the IPFS URLs as you want. And we also having like a special promo web page where you can download the demo build of the desktop versions for Windows, Mac, and Linux. where also IPFS is enabled by default. So that means that right now, whether you're on any of the like really popular major platforms, you'll be able to use IPFS pretty much seamlessly without no setup, no extensions, nothing.
Woo!
Yay!
Pause for a minute, because that's huge. Brad, this partnership, IPFS, Opera, Unstoppable Domain, seems seamless. Can you describe how the user experience is enhanced by this partnership?
Sure, and I guess kind of where we fit in, maybe just similar to what Dietrich gave, just a real quick story on traditional DNS. So traditional DNS domain names sit on these centralized DNS servers. It creates all kinds of weird attack problems, like, for example, your registrar, like GoDaddy or whatever, can be convinced to give somebody else control of your domain name, which happened in November for a few domains, and then they were able to update records and point people in a new direction, steal money, whatever. There's also been cases where a bunch of domain name systems are controlled and run by specific governments, and then when those governments have a new leadership, they might change the rules. So, for example, a lot of people were using .ly because it sounds like this kind of cool ending for a website. That's actually controlled by the Libyan government. And when a new Libyan government came in I think 2011, 2012, they changed the rules and started policing morality on all .ly domains, and websites were going down in Canada and other places all around the world. So super weird quirk of the internet that domain name systems have all of these random people who can control them. And so we built blockchain domain names. Blockchain domain names live on blockchains. We have .crypto, which is on Ethereum. Domain names are stored by the user. They're making their own updates. One of the most popular use cases is to add your decentralized website, your IPFS website. So that's where we fit in, and this is the goal here. I think ultimately is to give users an experience in Web3 that's very similar to what they would get in Web2, just with these new features. And I think the domain name kind of helps do that, because it's a piece of the puzzle that users are very familiar with. They go and they get a domain, or they type in a domain, and they can go find a website.
That's so cool. I'm going to have you follow up on those use cases in just a minute, but I wanted to ask Igor, can you describe the dev experience building on Web3 with Opera, IPFS, and Unstoppable?
Yeah. So basically, like if you're building like your dApp or something that's Web3 related, obviously you need to have a user interface that works with users, and then you have this kind of a last mile problem that, okay, your app is like a smart contract that's distributed on the blockchain, but then there's still a web page that's hosted somewhere that's like basically it's not resistant to censorship or something like that. Again, if the governments change or whatever. And then basically what you can do, because most of the dApps, they are basically single page applications written fully in JavaScript, so they don't have a server side, because basically the wallet serves as a server side, basically. That means that you can deploy it on IPFS, both like HTML and JavaScript and CSS files, and then have it ready. So what Opera offers there, again, it's you don't need to set up anything. You can use your default browser like DevTools and stuff like this. So you can build a smart contract. Of course, you need to build, test it, cover it, and then audit it, and then deploy to the mainnet, which is like process as usual. But then the difference is that instead of like creating a domain name at one of the hosting companies and hosting something on like IPFS or not AWS S3 or something like this, you just host it on IPFS. So you can just, let's say, run a local node and then use like IPFS add to deploy it to like IPFS. And then you can, for instance, write your local host node as a gateway to Opera, and then like locally test it that it works. And then it will also, you can switch back to the gateway and make sure that it's also loaded from the gateway as well. And then as soon as you settle with the actual release version, then you can create the crypto domains, because even though I would say that's technically the IPNS system that IPFS provides is very impressive and it's readable and you can understand what parts they're in, it's not very user-friendly if you want to catch a name to your project. And that's where the .crypto domains are coming into play. So you can use the wallet that's also built into like every major Opera browser as of now. So to buy yourself a .crypto domain and then point it to this address, I guess that's it, and then your app is live.
I think
That's
there might be
great.
one other thing that the domain name is doing there, which is allowing you to use the security of the blockchain, of like the Ethereum blockchain, in order to be able to sign the message to do the updates. So I think that's kind of one of the one of the magic powers here is that, you know, when you have a blockchain in general, you get a public-private key pair. If it's a human readable name like a domain name, then you can remember it and share it around, and then it's allowing you to sign messages with the private key to make updates. So I think, and there's been a lot of other kind of versions of naming out there, but I think that the superpower that you get with blockchains is that the kind of named public-private key pair.
Yeah, and I guess that you can also like it's composable, so you would plug it into like a multi-sig if it's like high stakes system. So it's like you are sure that even though you might lose your key or somebody might steal your personal like private key somehow, like there are like 4 other keys around, and you won't be able to alone change the domain settings, which is always like access control is always a pain in classical like security. So it's also one good thing.
Dietrich, what issues or challenges have you encountered that our dev audience might be interested in hearing about to hack on or biddle on? You know, there are bounties out there. Check out IPFS, Opera, Unstoppable. But, you know, give us like your, sort of pain points.
Yeah, I think there's actually the conversation that Igor and Brad were just having is really interesting to me. We now have some of these primitives of a higher level application system. It's getting easier and easier, especially with these browser integrations of IPFS, to actually push your IPFS data out to the edges and to be able to serve it from there eventually as well. And now with distributed naming systems, we start to ease the access and the UX around access to these services in a way that is human readable, and people can easily bookmark and type in the address bar of their browser, etc. And with these browsers, the naming and the underlying protocol, you start to have the pieces, but not necessarily like the multi-sig example talks about that Igor just mentioned, the workflow or the tooling. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges right now is we're now getting a clear picture where these pieces, we have these tools, we have them now in our hands. They are highly functional. They do that one thing well, but we need to close the tooling gap. We need to be able to have VS Code integration. We need to be able to have GitHub Actions, built-in support for a bunch of this stuff. And we're starting to see a little bit of that. Companies like Fleek are closing the gap in unifying these components in a way that makes it easy for new developers to be able to onboard to the platform, to be able to deploy services and systems pretty frictionlessly. I think we're going to see a lot more of that, closing the developer workflow gap.
Great, thanks. And Brad, let's get back to you. You had that LY story was odd, but not surprising. But can you give some interesting use cases at Unstoppable Domains, like who are scooping up domains, what's trending? Can you give us some tips or cool insights?
So I think what's trending is actually really similar to what's trending on Twitter. So like we see this a bunch, you know, whenever there's something going on with Wall Street bets, there's a bunch of domains associated with that, or Dogecoin over the past week, or elections a few months ago. It basically tracks to what people are what people are talking about or are trending on Twitter.
Yeah, especially today, right, with Elon Musk, you know, gobbling up all that Bitcoin. Dietrich, how can functionality be enhanced in the future? Well, you touched upon this a little bit, but where do you see things evolving for devs to get excited about?
Yeah, so it was great. I actually had a chance to talk with Igor a little bit in the IPFS booth in the virtual castle yesterday. If you haven't been there, come stop by. We were hanging out usually a couple hours every day. And we were talking about what it means to get, so the current Opera integration of IPFS is that you can use IPFS native addresses, and it proxies that request over to a IPFS HTTP gateway. What we were talking about is how do we push more and more of that decentralization all the way out to the edge and get that integrated more tightly into browsers. Especially the challenge is being able to run more IPFS functionality on the device on mobile. That's going to be a very, very important use case, but right now it's pretty costly to be able to run, to be able to do that. Imagine running a web server on your mobile device. Not something that is just so easy to do. Not something that a lot of people are doing. And so I think there's a lot of innovation to happen there. I'm also interested in how we ease publishing flows. So right now, one of the things that I do is I upload a photo onto IPFS and then I can share it with other people and share that address. And as long as I am, as long as I have my node running, then that data is available. But I want that data to be available all the time. So I want to be able to have the same diverse ecosystem of services that we have in the HTTP world, where I can publish my data. I know it's always going to be available all the time. And I want to be able to make that process as easy as possible. One of the things that if you are running an IPFS node locally that allows you to do is to be able to publish that data directly and share it with other people without having to upload to a third party first. So that really taking advantage of those types of features to ease the independent publishing flow is something that I'm really interested in browsers being a part of that story. It's the tool we have every day. It's the lingua franca of how we interact with the web in general, as opposed to through verticalized native apps or services. So I'm really interested in exploring that space, working with creators to figure out how to make it easier for them to be able to share their own data directly to their own readers, users, viewers, watchers.
Great, thank you. And my last question before I give you a moment to add whatever else you'd like to add to the panel. What have each of you used IPFS for personally? Igor, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I'm still in process of trying to move my personal blog into something IPFS hosted, because like the publishing platform that I'm using is not really great, and they're actually changing rules all the time. So sometimes my readers can't read my posts, and it's very annoying. And I want to also make sure that when I link to something, that I link to the exact version that I read when I linked it there. So yeah, basically blogging, and this is my primary example, but it's not published anywhere yet, but maybe within this year I'll try to get to this.
You'll get around.
So I've got I have a blog up at brad.crypto. You can check it out on Opera. So that's the thing I've done most recently. But have another idea in the works that I'm working on that I'll hopefully be sharing soon.
For me, I've used it for a bunch of things, obviously, because that's what I do. I use it to move data around sometimes, which is pretty good. I also share a lot of times like screenshots that I know I'm like, okay, it's gonna be so easy to be able to have this, and everybody can load it from wherever. Another one of the things I do is the IPFS docs website. So docs websites that are on IPFS mean that once you read them and then you open them again in your browser, even if you're offline, they still work. So be able to, and this is one of the things that be able to have naming services and the support in the browser makes things so much better, is that use case is now going to become kind of I think it's going to become the expected and the norm. Why would you have information that you want people to have access to be unavailable in the worst circumstances where they might be able to use it most? Things like anytime that someday we'll be able to do that again, be on a plane. You really want to be able to access that documentation. You don't want to have to do a whole bunch of round trips to be able to do that, right? So I think offline websites is something that I'm increasingly like, it feels right. It feels right that they just work. And that is something that I think once you get used to that, you start to expect it. Yeah, maybe you don't go back to the websites that don't work the way that you need them to as a user.
Yeah, actually, that reminded me of one more use case that I did like way back when. It was dependency management in Go, where like there is a tool that allows you to put request dependencies from IPFS, which I was super interested in the relatively big team and in the CI environment, because as long as these dependencies hit one developer machine, then even CI can take it locally, which is like super efficient. And there was a time when I don't remember, there was something with either npm repo basically or something like this. So it went down, and then half of the internet CI stuff went down with it. So yeah, that's one more use case that I didn't look at this for over a year, but I might come back to that.
There's actually one of the folks on the IPFS team published an experiment called I think it's Forest.io. I'll share the link in the Discord. It basically caches your npm modules locally, and it's fantastic for doing things like you do an npm install, and then you do an npm install in a container, and it just pulls from the local cache as opposed to having to do network round trips. It's incredible experience from a performance standpoint, and really just being able to make things work. And you can do that kind of stuff without having to have a full connection, or if you have a terrible connection, having to do those module pools that npm is so famous for, is now much more pleasurable experience.
Oh yeah, I wanted to point out that we are here probably a very sort of used to good internet connections, or at least decent ones. But since Opera is not on, like a lot of people who use Opera, they actually use it like in Africa or in Asian countries. And then when you are there, locally cached content is like totally at the other level, because I tried to download Xcode, the iOS developers, I think it's like 4 gigs or something like this once in China. And it took me a week, like literally. So that's what, like, if you can look at this stream live, like you can feel very, very like privileged that you have a decent internet connection.
Even if you're at a conference, right, and one person decides to download Xcode, and everybody else having to do that also can pull it from their local IPFS cache, right, at the block level, at this much smaller bits, like not the whole thing. So
yeah, that's a good point. This panel is really indicative of the collaborative nature of the Ethereum ecosystem. So, Opera, IPFS, Unstoppable Domains, partners like you guys make it feel like we're not really working, but all fun. It's all good. Thank you all for being here. Are there any last remarks or anything you guys are really excited about here at ETHDenver that you want to share before we let the next guys on?
I just saw the list of all the projects that have submitted, and there's really a lot of them. I'm super excited to spend the next couple of days tripping around, going through those Spiritly rooms and talking to those groups about what projects they're going to be building. Also, it would be remiss if I didn't say, go install Opera Touch on iOS today, because it has IPFS support for the addresses now.
Yay!
Yeah, and go to ETHDenver2021opera.com to request your desktop build if you want to try some preview on your Linux, Mac, or Windows machine. And yeah, I'm also super excited to see the hackathon results. It looks like the activity in the Discord was that was a lot of activity and a lot of interesting things going on.
So can hackers or biddlers see you guys at office hours? Where can they get the link, or when do things kind of go live?
The IPFS channel on Discord, on the ETHDenver Discord, there's a bunch of us hanging out in there, and we've been doing office hours at least once a day since starting Friday, and we'll run it through probably to the end of the event to make sure that we're available to folks there.
Great.
Yeah, I also trying to join it, the IPFS booth there every now and then, whenever I can. Like, I'm in European time zone, so I only can do my evening, your morning ones, but
Yeah, somebody wants to go to bed soon over there, Igor.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all. So much fun. Love working with you guys. Have fun here at ETHDenver. Put
Thanks,
a
Susie.
spork in it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Susie, and the whole panel. This
sure.
discussion made me so excited because it just touches on so many elements that are really evolving fast and that are so necessary. Building out an entire stack, and especially leveraging that decentralized file storage. And then definitely a shout out to Opera because you guys have been flying that crypto flag for multiple years now. You guys saw where things were headed, and it's just fun to see what all the new iterations of what you guys are doing and how you're solving some of the UI UX issues. So thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.